There is some background noise from your end, though.
Okay, I'll adjust it and then I'll mute myself. Let me see if we are live. Uh, yes, we are. Great. Hello, everyone. So, Faiza Yusuf here from Women in Tech PK. And today is our episode 3 and the last episode of our communication skills workshop series. We have Nadia Khan with us, and she'll be talking about effective presentation skills. You can, drop your questions or whatever you want to talk to her about in the comments, and I'm going to make sure that she gets all the information. You can also inbox on our Facebook page if there is a question that you do not want other people to see, or you can directly send it to me as well. So thank you so much, and over to you, Nadia.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Faiza, and welcome to the last webinar of the series. I hope you got some value out of these webinars. Uh, the main thing that I want to talk about with these webinars is that maybe in the moment you may think of some things, but then these are also meant to be reflective in nature so that you can go on and then reflect on the points that we kind of made in these webinars. So welcome to the last webinar, Effective Presentation Skills. And before I continue, I just really want to thank Faiza, Shamim, and Yumna and Women in Tech for this wonderful opportunity. And because I love kind of, sharing my expertise and skills with everybody, and hopefully you'll benefit from this as well. A little bit about me. I'm a professional development coach and a communication skills coach, also a speaking skills and communication skills instructor at Miracosta College in California and also Bow Valley College in Canada. I also teach online. I am a teacher trainer at Bow Valley College. I presented, facilitated. I used to be an IELTS examiner, and I'm a college instructor. So lots and lots of different things. Also, diversity and inclusion trainer, and again, instructional design, curriculum design. So there's a lot of like different hats that I wear in my role as an instructor. So that was just a little bit about me. And now coming on to our topic for today, effective workplace communication or effective presentation skills. So obviously, presentations skills come under the umbrella of communication, right? So in order for any communication to be effective, there are some things that you really need to work on. And that is, first and foremost, you have to be an active listener. And I'll speak about that in a little bit when we move on to actual the presentation things themselves. Now, remember that as you're presenting, you also have to actively listen to the needs of the audience. So if you are creating a presentation, obviously that presentation is for an audience, right? So before you even start, you need to do some homework and you need to kind of actively listen, or you need to also kind of do a needs analysis of sorts of what are some of the things that you need to put in your presentation. During your presentation, remember that again, you have to actively listen, and there has to be a sense of genuineness in your communication. That the audience must get this feeling that you're genuinely interested in them, and that is why you've put this up. Remember that whenever you're communicating or creating any kind of a presentation, you have to be very careful of implicit bias. So implicit bias could come across as you did not intend it to be there. And then what happened was that it was that unconscious bias that came in. So be careful of that, because otherwise you might come across as somebody who's biased, and then the audience might block, their kind of, your messages may not get to your audience. Remember to have a clear and concise message. And a very important rule in terms of presentation skills is adaptability in style and register according to your audience. So you have to tweak your presentation style according to your audience. Some people might just get it, other people might not. So you may have to kind of build your presentation in that sense that you have. And remember that when you are communicating during a presentation, nonverbal cues are very important. And then you can take notes of any questions, other things that you have, repeat the main points. If you need to follow up with an email or you need to follow up after the presentation, you could also do some of those things that you have. Now, in terms of an effective presentation, there are a few features that we really need to focus on, and that is number one rule is that your presentation should be concise and succinct. This means that less is more, right? Don't fill up your presentation or your slides with a lot of text. So if they're text heavy and they're very busy, the audience might not get the meaning. So that's the number one thing that you have to look at. That you have to engage your audience in a way that they understand that you are investing in them. So that is why it's very important to prepare and practice your presentation. Now, when we talk about preparing for your presentation or practicing for your presentation, there are a few things that you can keep in mind. First of all, create a clear agenda for your audience in your presentation. So your presentation must be structured in a clear way so that the audience understands what you're trying to say. Streamline your ideas, obviously according to that structure, and always remember that built-in signposts as you're presenting. So if you're going to move on to the next point, or if you're going to summarize that same point, there have to be some clear signposts in your presentations. If it's a live presentation, we can always do that by physical cues as well and nonverbal cues as well. But even in the online realm, so some things like, okay, so moving on, or just to recap, so some phrases like these give audiences the cues that you're ready to move on, or you are just summarizing that point that you have. Practicing for your presentation is very important. In terms of practice, remember that practicing can help you have clarity and confidence. And I'll talk more about practicing with audiences, with other things in a bit. And remember that your presentation must be free of errors and omissions. So there's nothing that kind of puts off an audience, then lots of glaring mistakes on your slides, or there are things that are there in your presentation that really you should be checking beforehand. So it's very important to reflect and check on your presentation. So we just talked about these things. After the practice, remember that we must also look at some verbal and non-verbal cues, and then there are some tactical moves that you really need to be careful. So verbal and non-verbal cues, what does that mean? So this means that when you are presenting, your speech, it should be clear, your voice and thought, everything should be clear. So if you are confused in your mind, that confusion is going to show up in your presentation. Maintain eye contact with the audience. That's very important. A lot of people will either look at down at their feet, or they will look up in the air, or just look at their notes. Those things are a put off for the audience. Your main purpose is to get your idea across to your audience, and how are you going to do that is very important. So that's why these looking at the audience is very important. You can also have fillers. So if you think that you're going to forget the content, you can also build in some fillers and maybe have some questions. Use words like something like is one filler that you can use, or you can use words like so these things will help you if you overcome your hesitation. Now, remember that your tone and intonation, those things are also very important. How are you coming across? Are you coming across as being very aggressive? Are you speaking too fast? Are you speaking in a low voice? So how are you speaking? So all of those things, how you project your voice, those things are also things that are very important. And then remember that when we are nervous, so I've been just kind of reading up on this concept of amygdala hijack. So when we are nervous, what we do is that we tend to default to our habitual tendencies. So in nervousness, if we hesitate or say a lot, or we roll our eyes or play with our hair, all of those things are going to be pronounced when you are going to be presenting. So remember to remain calm. Deep breathing helps, being mindful helps. And the next point that we have over here is tactical moves. So in your presentation, now this is not so much for online presentations, but in-person presentations, is that how you where you stand and how you kind of project yourself is very important for the audience. Now, some tactical moves that you can build into your presentation have to do with the spatial moves, like where you're standing, and others could be in your presentation, like using rhetorical devices, questions, pausing deliberately, or repeating something deliberately so that it sinks in. Again, your voice and tone. Questioning, so questioning is another very good technique that you can deliberately put into your presentation, so that you can, number one, check audience engagement, and number two, it kind of tells you how prepared you are, or gives you time to move on to the next point. So questioning can also be a signpost that, okay, so you want to summarize, so instead of just saying, okay, let's recap, you can just ask the audience a question and then move on from there. So, in terms of speaker position, remember that if you are too far away, move back from the audience, or too close to the audience. In both situations, it's going to be a little bit difficult. So, hopefully, you don't come across as intimidating, or that you don't come across as somebody who's very, like, kind of does not have a lot of confidence, and you are in a position where you are kind of removed from the audience. So, in both these situations, we don't want that. In some terms of tactical moves, you can also put in light humor. So humor is a good way of dispelling the nervousness. It's a good way of getting the audience engaged and back on track. So some of these things are you need to practice, and you need to continue as you move on. Now, in terms of boosting your confidence, how do you do that? So there are a certain number of ways in which you can do that. So first and foremost is tackle your inner nervousness. Now, sometimes nervousness is not like you're nervous, but maybe you have a lot of things on your mind. So that is why you have to be mindful and in the moment. You have to be in the moment and remember that nothing else. So your phone is away, other things are away, and you're just kind of in that moment, focusing on that presentation. And in terms of tackling your inner nervousness, what you can do is that deep breathing is something that really helps, and being mindful really helps. You can also create checklists and notes for yourself, and you can also be flexible. So remember, flexibility will allow you to tackle your inner nervousness. So what does it mean to be flexible? So being flexible means that if you think that the way you thought that the presentation would go, it doesn't go that way, you're ready to change it or adapt it or add in more points or cut some points. So those things are really important. Now, confidence. So confidence is something that we sometimes we all feel that we don't have enough confidence. But remember that we can display that confidence. Now, you can do that through posture and body movement. So how you stand, how you sit, those things are going to send that message to your audience if you're confident or you're not. So something like, if you're standing or sitting with your shoulders hunched, or are you standing straight, are your arms closed, are your hands in your pockets? So all of these things give the audience a lot of ways. So you will notice a lot of people have their hands in their pockets, or they will have their hands arms crossed. Now those things are come across as somebody who is a closed person, who's nervous, who needs all of these different features to really kind of hold on to. So remember to display that confidence in a way that you come across as an open person and not somebody who's closed. In terms of being displaying your confidence, it also comes across with what we wear. So dress professionally. Professional attire is important. However, remember, never don't wear anything uncomfortable. So if you're presenting, you are somebody who's already nervous, and you know that you're going to be hesitant. So remember to be comfortable. So if you're comfortable in your shoes, your dress, that is kind of minimizing some of the things that are leading to that nervousness that you have. So that's a very important point. And then your expressions. So your expressions will also display your confidence. Are you smiling? Are you nodding? Are you engaging with the audience? A lot of times when we look at somebody in the eye when we're presenting, we kind of just freeze. So again, that amygdala hijack happens, and we are in that flight, fight or freeze mode, and then we just kind of become a rabbit or a deer stuck in headlight, right? So we just are frozen over there. So that's why you have to understand that all of these things matter a lot. So do whatever works for you. In terms of looking at people in the eye, sometimes what happens is that you don't have to look at somebody directly in the eye. What you could do is maybe look past their shoulder, maybe look a little above or to the side of somebody's face if you want to avoid that that gaze. Or what you could also do is that you could have some trusted colleagues or people that you know that you're comfortable with, that you can just count on, that you can just tell them that if I'm going to look at you, don't give me that blank look, or don't you know sometimes a lot of people will nod or they will have some questioning looks, and those things can also throw people off. And then so that's why it's important to know that how do you want to look at them. And then the last point is reflection and growth. So after your presentation, it's very important to reflect and grow. And how can you reflect and grow? So there are a number of ways that you can do this. One way is that you can record yourself. So before your presentation, obviously, you're practicing. So during one of your practice sessions, you could record yourself to see how you sound, what are some of the things that mistakes that you're making. And then the other one is that you can also practice in front of the mirror. So I always kind of tell people that this is a very effective strategy that you can do, and that is that you can practice in front of the mirror. As we move on to, I also have some points around how to present online. I'll also kind of share some of these things over there again. A lot of your these video conferencing apps and platforms now have so many cool features where you can really kind of feel comfortable. So when we talk about online presentation, then I'll just kind of go over those things as well. Now, the very important point of all of this is to engage your audience. So that's the first thing that you need to do. So think about this question: how do you gain your audience's attention? What do you do? Do you even try to gain your audience's attention? Or do you, when you're presenting, are you just presenting, or are you making an effort to make sure that your audience seems interested and your audience interacts with you? So think about this question: how do you engage your audience? And if the answer is, well, I don't know, I've never tried, then maybe some of these points that I'm going to talk about are going to help you out. So the first thing that you really need to know is to know your audience. So when you think about knowing your audience, is understanding for example, the background that your audience comes from. That will help you decide on the language, the main points, or other things. Now, if it's a company meeting, probably you're very comfortable with your audience. You know what they need. If it's a new client, probably you're not very sure of who they are. So maybe a little bit of research will help you. And then when you're talking about your audience, remember that knowing your audience, it's a good strategy to move from familiar to unfamiliar. So especially if you're introducing a new concept, a new idea, it's a new venture. So moving from familiar to unfamiliar can be a strategy that you can help to make your audience comfortable with your presentation. So that's something that you can also do. Um, the other thing that you can work on is to interact with your audience. And how can you do that? So just as I had talked earlier, you can build in these signposts. You can have some check-in points. So those check-in points could be in the form of questions. They could be in the form of maybe you want to pair people up or group people up and see how they kind of come across, or what they do when you are talking about something specific. Check-in points in an online platform, on an online environment, are a little bit hard, because in that sense, especially if the session is being recorded, you really need to think it out, and then you need to kind of build in these question asking or answering strategies. So maybe just telling your audience beforehand. So just like in our presentation today, if I introduced to you the way that we were going to go, and she said, you're open to use the chat to ask questions, or to inbox, so kind of these strategies really help the audience, so that that as an audience, if you have a question, you can ask that question right away, and then it will be answered during the duration of the presentation itself. So that's important. Creating and interacting with your audience, another point that you could do is have an effective beginning and a conclusion. So that way, when you're starting off and when you're ending, those are the impactful points that the audience must have. So create an impactful opening and an impactful conclusion to your presentation. Always include a call to action in your presentation. So that's a good idea. So call to action could be something like leaving the audience with a question, leaving the audience with maybe some quotations, some other data that, or giving them the next steps. So call to actions could be any of these things. So depending on your type of presentation, it could be that you've asked them a question that they need to look at. Are you asking them to reflect? Are you asking them to find answers? Or have you motivated them to go on and maybe research about or take part in some kind of projects or some kind of things that are happening? So those things are important as well. The third point in engaging your audience is that we, as presenters, we need to be responsive. Again, this is something that in an online webinar, if it's side by side and we have questions, yes, we can do that. Because remember, when we're talking about webinars, even like this one, even though this is going to be recorded, there's a difference between a YouTube kind of video that you're creating and there's a difference in a webinar like this. So you have to also understand those things. Now, in a webinar like this, I'm kind of talking to you, assuming that you're all listening, right? And then assuming that I will get answers. In a YouTube video or in a video, we know that we are not going to get any response from the audience. So that's why we almost make it like the audience is not present, as you would write something out that is very clear and that people understand what they're doing. Whereas in a webinar or in a presentation, it's more interactive. You are doing it with the purpose that the audience is present over there and the audience is listening to you and they're engaged. So those are some of the things that are the differences between some of the ways that we need to present. In terms of being responsive, um, again, show a keen interest in the audience. They're there, they're giving you their time. So be respectful of that. Again, show flexibility. Flexibility is very important. Adapt your speaking style, your presentation style, everything according to the needs of the audience. Now, that means that if you're running short of time, it's not what is more important, that you read each and every word on your slide or that you answer the audience's questions, which is, so think in your mind, what's going to make an impact, that I read everything that I put on my slides or that I just kind of engage with the audience. One way, if some a lot of times this happens that we run out of time, so a good way is to, maybe you made some excellent points on your presentation, so a good way could be to summarize your main points and then just move on from there. Even sometimes it happens that presenters will skip a lot of slide because they're running short of time and then they can become nervous. Even in that sense, I think it's a good idea to just kind of summarize the main points and then just move on with the flow of the presentation. And then when we are talking about, so these things will help you in engaging your audience and creating the interest of the audience. Now, some tips that I have for presenting online. Nowadays, with COVID-19, a lot of us have been kind of pushed to the online realm. And when you talk about online presentations, there are a number of things that we really need to be careful about. And then the first and foremost of those would be to check our surroundings. So if we are doing a webinar or if we're in front of the camera, what is my background like? So nowadays with Zoom, with MS Teams, with so many other like platforms, we do get these virtual backgrounds. Think about that. What do you want the audience to see? Do you want the audience to see your room, your background? If you're somebody like that, then choose a spot that really is not distracting. So a lot of times when we have presenters or when we see people, even during team meetings, there's a lot of busyness in the background. There's so many things that are happening in the background. There's closets, there's the bed, and we all know that we are kind of working from home, or we are living in a workspace, whatever you want to say that call it. So remember that just as at the workplace, you kind of maintain a professional space around yourself. That is the same way that you may want to do at home as well. So check your surroundings, that there are no distractions. It's not very busy. If you are in a space or a place where it's unavoidable, then maybe choose a virtual background so that you can the focus can be on you. The other thing very important is connectivity. So check your connectivity, your internet connection, speakers, sound, because all of these things, as we talked about in the physical kind of presentation realm, that the way you sound, your voice projection, how you, your tone and intonation, all of these things matter. In the same way, in an online realm, your sound, your speakers, all of these things matter a lot. And then the other thing is that remember that as an online presenter, you also have to focus on this thing that these things may happen. So have a backup plan. So maybe some phrases or other things that you can talk about, and just to kind of calm the audience down. So those things are something that are very important. Frame and posture. So again, when you talk about frame and posture, that is the frame that you have in when you're presenting. So right now in my frame, I'm kind of centered, and so you may have to move your screen up or down. A lot of times when you're presenting online, it's a good idea to have your screen or the camera at such an angle that it's kind of above you and not at eye level. So in that sense, right now, if I could show you mine, I have a couple of boxes of Scrabble and Monopoly right underneath my laptop. That way, they kind of give height to my laptop, and then so I'm not really looking directly at the camera. I'm looking. The camera is a little bit, just at a height above me. So that kind of gives a good way of when you're presenting. And then our posture. So posture is how you're sitting. Are you too close to the camera, right, that your face is all in, or are you too moved back? So how are you sitting? Is it too casual? How do you come across when you are presenting online? So again, some of the things that are very important. Main thing, just repeating that practicing and reflecting even in an online realm is very important. How do you practice? So for the physical presentation, we said that you could record yourself, you could present in front of the mirror. Same with the online presentation or a webinar, that you can record yourself, right? And you can see, even if you don't record yourself, you can just switch on the camera to see how you look. There is a really cool feature that MS Teams has. And if you are familiar with MS Teams, they have a really cool feature where they have a together mode now. So this is a new, I guess, thing that they introduced, and that's a together feature. I could not get a picture of that. I use that with my students a lot. The reason why I could not do that was because I do have pictures, but then I can't share them with over here because of privacy laws. So that's why. So what happens is that it's a together mode, and in that together mode, unlike Zoom, so on Zoom, what happens is that if you want to have that together mode, all the different screens will pop up. But in MS Teams, with this new feature, what happens is that the background changes as if we're sitting in a movie theater. So we are all sitting on comfortable chairs in an amphitheater or a theater, and everybody's facing. So we're all facing each other. So when we speak, it seems like we're all kind of watching a presentation or a play or a movie. And then when one person speaks, we're just kind of speaking from within the audience. So that is such a good feature that I really like, because it gives me the chance to look at myself in a very different way, not like this face to face camera thing. It seems as if I'm on stage and I'm looking at myself sitting in the audience. And when I speak and when I kind of move my hands, that's how somebody else will see me when I'm talking or speaking. So that I find we use it with my students. I use it with my students to practice, because then when they look at themselves as if from somebody else's eyes, they're able to improve their posture, their body movement, their camera, or other things that they have to do. So those are some of the main points about presenting. And I wanted to keep it short because that's what I had talked about, that a good presentation is something that's concise. So if you need to connect with me, you can connect with me. And this is the last of the webinar series, right? So you can connect with me through LinkedIn, Twitter. I've also given you my email. So you can use any of these ways to connect with me. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of open up the floor to questions. So if you have any questions, then I'd be happy to answer those questions. Thank you, Faisal. So let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Just going to see if there are any questions in the chat. So I think maybe there was some connectivity issues. I'm just kind of waiting for questions. I'm just going to go on. Um, the actual site itself and then see if people have any questions. So when we talked about being unpredictable or unpredictability, so this is what happens, right? So we are live right now, and then so I am kind of in the group. So please let me know if you have any questions for me. And I hope that you found these webinar series effective because,
G.
yeah, hi Faiza.
Yeah, hi. So we have a few questions. I'm just, reading them so that you can respond to them.
Sure.
So the first question is about improving your listening skills. So the person is saying that does listening skill only means that you listen to someone and you respond, or is this also about non-verbal communication?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So remember, when we talk about communication, it's the impact of effective communication. We say that it's 30% words and 70% nonverbal communication. So in terms of nonverbal communication, yes, very important. Depends on why. When you talk about listening skills in a meeting, even online or in person, it's the whole it's the whole situation or the whole communication that matters. So yes, be on the lookout for the words that they say, but you also have to look out for how they say it, not just what, but how they're saying it, the tone, intonation. Maybe there's eye rolling or there's hesitation. So what is the pitch and the tone like? So those things are very, very, very important. So when we talk about active listening, it's not just listening to the words, but also the unsaid words as well. How is somebody sitting? So when you are presenting, I remember way back when we were in college, one person actually got very confused in their presentation, even though they were a confident presenter, but they were very confused just by the way a couple of people in class were sitting with their arms crossed and just kind of giving that vibe that they're not interested in this presentation. So those kind of cues also have an impact when we talk about active listening. So in a meeting, if you have somebody who is not listening, if you think they're not listening, but actually they are, but they're kind of busy doing something else. So take into account all of those things. So yes, it's words and the nonverbal behavior that you should be looking for as well. And in terms of practicing for your listening skills, there are lots of websites. There are lots of websites that are out there. Taking notes while listening, I think, is a good strategy. So a lot of times, especially if you're dealing with international clients, you are going to come across different accents. You're going to come across different ways people say things. So even things like some cultures are direct in their communication, some cultures are not. So, for example, just to give you an example of even the difference between the American and the Canadian work culture. And the Canadian work culture is not really that direct. They kind of use lots of models of possibility, but what they mean to say is that you should do this. So they will not say you should. They will say you might want to do this, right? As it comes across as a suggestion. So if somebody's not aware of that, They may think that, oh, this person's not telling me that this is imperative or important. They're just telling me that this is a suggestion that I have. Whereas in the American culture, it's more direct. So there are instances where this miscommunication has happened just because people are not kind of aware of. So they may be aware of the meaning of the word, but they're not aware of how those words are used in that context. Uh, I also want to point out one thing that I was just kind of going over some questions in one of the, I think it was in one of the posts about accents and understanding people and how to kind of improve the listening. The thing is that if you ask somebody to repeat, that's okay. It's totally okay if you ask somebody to repeat. It does not come across as if you have poor listening skills. No, it does not come across as that. So imagine if you are speaking with somebody who's not from the Pakistani origin, and they are finding it difficult to understand you, and if they ask you, can you please repeat, do they come across as if they don't understand or don't know English? No, it just is that they don't understand, and that's why they're asking you to repeat. So repetition, so asking somebody to repeat is a good idea. Rephrasing what they have said at the end of a conversation is very important. So as you take notes, rephrasing and saying, okay, so you meant this is what I need to do. Those things are also something very important. Yeah. Thanks, Faisal.
The next question is about how to deal with confrontational questions when people are trying to ask you questions to bring you down after a presentation.
Again, that's a very good question. So when you have some questions that you think are going to be confrontational, they may turn the presentation into an argument. So there are a number of ways to deal with it. So depending on the time, depending on the situation, what you could do is, first of all, you could deal with the question directly and ask them, just respond to that confrontational question in a calm way. So very important. Number one rule of effective communication is that you are not going to mirror the audience's aggression or their if they're angry, so you're not going to mirror that. And in fact, if you are the presenter, you hold the floor, the audience is in a way going to mirror however you act and react. So please do not react aggressively if somebody is asking that question, number one. Number two, please do not be intimidated. So that's the other thing that you really need to take care of, that please do not be intimidated by that particular question and you become nervous again and then you don't know what to say, how to say. So one thing is that get that question. If you think that you're able to answer that question, so depending on the question, if you think that you're able to answer that question in a calm, cool manner. Remember one rule, it's about the content, not about the person. So when you are communicating, especially in an argument, something that you really have to understand is that you can disagree agreeably. And when you disagree agreeably, this means that you have to send that signal across to that other person that I disagree with you on this particular point. So it's the point that we disagree on. It's not that I have anything against you. So if you have to send that message across to that other person that we are going to we differ, our opinions differ on this particular point. So avoid saying like you said this or you said that or you always do this. So don't attack the person themselves even when you're responding. Stick to the issue, stick to the content, have do your research, back up your points by evidence, back up your points by reasoning. Those are some of the things that are very important. That's number one. That's one way. If you want to tackle it, do it that way in a calm, calculated, cool manner where it's about the issue and not about the person. Do not feel intimidated that, oh my God, my boss is watching me and this is happening and that is happening. Deal with that in a calm way, and the audience will mirror your action as well. The other way is that if you think that this is an off topic question, so please be straightforward and tell them that that's a relevant, that's a good question, but I don't see the relevance of that question related to this particular topic. So you as the presenter hold the floor. That is one thing to remember, that you have the advantage of handling how you kind of want to let the presentation or that time go. So you are handling that, you're holding the floor, and so the way you tackle things, that's going to impact your overall presentation as well. If you want to tackle it head on, go ahead, but then be cool and calm. If you want to let them know that, well, well, this is a question, but I don't see the relevance to my particular um, question, you can just say that, well, that's perhaps a good question for another meeting, or maybe that's a good question for the sales team, or that's a good question for the marketing team. I really don't see the relevance. Could you explain? When you ask people to explain what they really mean, that also kind of, sometimes helps them think about their question. So sometimes people might not even be asking a question, it's more of a criticism. So they're kind of critiquing you, but doing so in terms of asking a question. So if you ask them to elaborate, or just ask them like, can you explain to me the relevance of your question to this presentation, and I'd be happy to answer it. If they're able to show you the connection, so that kind of, is a good way of diffusing the strategy. Or you can just simply say that, we don't have enough time for this. I will get back to you with your question if you think that you need time to research and if you need time to think about it. So it's very important as a speaker, as a presenter, to understand that we yes, we hold the floor, but that does not mean that we have answers to everything, right? So what you can do is you can acknowledge that you've understood and you've accepted their question, but you will get back to them. But then make sure that you do get back to them. So that's the other thing, that what is the what is the culture around communication where you work. So please do get back to them. Or if you think that there are other people who would like to know the answers to those questions, you can say, I need to research about that question a little bit, but what I'll do is, if you want more information, please, this is a sign up sheet, let me know your email and I will get back to you. And a number of times, people will sign up if they're really interested in something that's there. So I hope these two ways kind of help you to deal with confrontational questions.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm moving to the next question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's can you please briefly describe the pattern or agenda which should be used while introducing a new project to people?
So the agenda or the structure, it depends on how you want to kind of go about it. But I think I dealt with this particular point in one of the earlier webinars that was outside of these series, but we talked about it briefly before. So don't have a very busy agenda. So that's the first thing that you really want to focus on. Don't have a very busy agenda. Make sure that you have breaks or other things that are in there. And the other thing that you can do is keep, so as I said, keep it simple. I'm just thinking if I can just maybe show you some examples around that. Just give me a minute. I'm just going to see if my screen allows me to do that. So again, as I said, have the introduction. So that's what we had talked about first. So have the introduction. That's the first thing that you may want to do. Think about it. If you were to introduce that thing in writing or other things, how would you kind of go about it, and how would you focus on that? So think about that. And then if do you think that in your agenda you need to just, yeah, the other effective way that you can do this is start with the outcomes. So start with the outcomes of, can you see me? Yeah. Sorry. Hopefully I'm just going to share this one screen with you. So this is a screen. This is an example of outcomes. So when you have a meeting or a presentation, what you can do is you can start by outlining or coming up with outcomes. So it's a good idea to have outcomes for your presentation. So that's a strategy that you could use to come up with the agenda. So for example, over here, I had these webinar outcomes that I would like to identify important considerations related to online instruction, explore strategies to maximize student engagement, and reflect on what will work in the current teaching scenario. So those are my three main webinar outcomes. So I started off with the presentation outcomes. And then what I went on to do was that this is a very simple agenda that I have. And in this agenda, what I'm doing is that I am kind of, aligning it with these webinar outcomes. So we talked about considerations, student engagement, and the current teaching scenario. So considerations, we'll have tech, we have content, and then we have the audience. So it's very simple, but these are signposts for me that we move on. As I move on in my presentation, what I do is, if you will notice over here, tech is highlighted. I'm just going to quickly go on with this. The next piece that I want to focus on is content. So I do insert that one slide telling my audience that I'm moving from tech to content. So I've highlighted content, I've kept the same slide. And then when I want to move on to the audience, I'm just going to use the same slide but have audience that is highlighted. So a good way is to first of all determine the outcomes of your presentation or your webinar, and then match those up with a very simple agenda such as like this, that kind of tells us that these are the 3 things or 4 things that we are going to focus on. And within each of these, then you can have some activities or other things that you want. Thank you, Faiza.
Great. Moving on to the next question. It's by Shamim. Um, Telling you the name because you already know her. Shamim is saying that, so one of the things that I have struggled with while presenting is my own focus, since I'm not sure whether my audience is actually grabbing the concept. I can't see a nod of the head or the eyes rolling. How do I ensure my own focus in that situation?
Shamim, that is an excellent question, and something that I right now I'm facing myself, because the audience is missing, right? And especially when we were just kind of moving from the presentation stage to the question stage, at that point in time there was this gap. So how do you do that? Well, I would suggest the a few things, and some of the tips could be that you don't come across as confused. So if you don't know if the audience is nodding or eye rolling, assume that all is good. Assume that they are listening, because what happens is that when we don't get the response from the audience and we don't know if you're just kind of speaking to the wall or not, in that situation what happens is that I would suggest that then go into that mode where you're presenting for a pre, or you're speaking for a pre-recorded video or a YouTube video or something where you know that the audience is going to be missing, and then the reactions are going to come later on. So you may have to shift your focus as a presenter for that moment where you know that the audience is not, or you don't know if the audience is interacting or engaging with you. In that sense, what you do is that you assume that the audience probably is not there, and then you have to explain or be kind of explicit about what your different things are. But in doing so, remember that the confusion that happens, and I totally agree with you, that when we don't know if the audience is kind of identifies the situation with us, is agreeing with us, or it is disagreeing with us, in that sense, I would say, get just go with your judgment and continue on following your agenda, so that there's no confusion. Yeah, that's the main thing that I can kind of go on and saying that, as a writer, if you're writing and we don't know, so that is the main difference between speaking and writing, right? That in speaking the audience is present, and then we know what the reactions of the audience are going to be. But in writing, we don't know how the audience is going to perceive it, how they're going to react. So we are very explicit, and we kind of make our points explicitly without showing any confusion in that writing. So I would suggest that if you're not aware or sure of if your audience is listening or not, go in that mode where you know that I'm presenting, so I have to be crystal clear and make sure that there's no confusion, and then you'll get the feedback later on. Thank you, Faisal.
Right. Thank you so much. I have 2 more questions. This is about people who have performance anxiety. So she said that I have a lot of performance anxiety. So when I can feel that a lot of people are looking at me, I feel really anxious. Breathing exercises do not work. Is there anything else that I can do to ensure that I do not get overwhelmed?
Okay. So, well, I was going to suggest breathing exercises. Now, you have to again reflect and see, are you breathing from your lungs or from your stomach? So, in terms of when we talk about breathing exercises, the ones that work, those are the ones where you need to breathe from your stomach. So, when we talk about deep breathing, that breathing has to come from your stomach, so that because there's proven research that deep breathing really does help, and it kind of, it brings you back in the moment. So again, I think when you have performance anxiety, what's actually happening is that amygdala hijack that I talked about, and you're going into that mode of kind of, being stressed about it, and then either you're going to freeze or you're going to just come across as very nervous. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you really want to maybe perhaps do is that come across some grounding techniques, and those grounding techniques are that in the moment, how are you going to come across in the moment? So some grounding techniques, you will have to see which grounding techniques work for you. Some grounding techniques that work for me are, a lot of people don't know, I use my hands a lot when I speak, and some when I'm nervous I will use them more. So what I do is that I have a ring that I wear, and a lot of people don't know, but I just kind of, my grounding technique is to just to kind of hold on to my ring on my hand, and in that way I don't kind of come across as being nervous. I'm not fidgeting with it, I just kind of holding on to it. That kind of, tells me that I need to come back into the moment and be present over here. The other grounding technique that you can use is to have a like a checklist or some notes in front of you that you really kind of need to see. I'm a visual learner, so for me, it's very important to see what I'm going to see, and to, if I need to come back to that topic, I have to have, otherwise I'm going to obviously probably going to blank out. But I need to have those points right in front of me. So that, but that does not mean that you create those points for every slide. So just like I showed you with the webinar agenda for the other presentation that I'd done for my college, just focus on those three main things. If it's tech, so think, okay, I'm going to come back to tech and talk about that particular point that I had. So those are some of the things that you can have. Just maybe having some water, and then I think the first thing is to assure yourself and reassure yourself that this is a presentation, and I will be able to do it. Standing in front of the mirror and just speaking to myself helped a lot, or presenting in front of the mirror helped a lot for me. So I don't know if you have tried that or not, but do try that. Number one. Number two, again, deep breathing. From when we practice mindfulness, in the mindfulness exercises, when you are just kind of, you let loose everything else and just focus on that you're in the moment, you could practice some of those things as well. But you said that breathing exercises don't work for you that well. And the third thing is that you could create this checklist or these check-in points for yourself as well. Maybe you could have some pointers where you could say, okay, if I detract, or if I just kind of, move away, or I'm anxious, this is the main point that I have to come back to. So this is the main point that I need to come back to. Some of the things that you can work on. I hope that answer helps. Thank you, Faiza.
Right. And this is the last question. So someone has, yeah. So she's mentioning that um, talking while giving a presentation means that you need to control the power and pace of your speech. So how do I make sure that I am not super loud or talking really fast?
Okay, so again, mindfulness is the main thing that you really need to focus on. How do you make sure that you're not actually shouting or talking in a loud voice? My tendency when I'm kind of, nervous or overwhelmed is to speak really fast. I continue to speak fast. So what you could do is there are a number of ways, and I think for some of the other questions also we could look at these ways. Is that setting those boundaries, or setting those kind of, house rules before you start the presentation is very important. Maybe have a trusted friend or somebody who you can just designate for this purpose, like a colleague, and tell them that, if I'm going too fast, just signal me, just let me know. If I'm speaking too loud, can you just, give me a cue? So you will have to prepare. So for a presentation you will need to prepare. That's the first point. Number two is, when you're practicing, you could record yourself practicing in different modes. If you're speaking too slow, if you're speaking too loud, what are some of the things? But I agree with you that in the moment when we're speaking or when we're presenting, and especially when you're interacting, our tone and voices can change. So the main way that you can do this is by practicing. So you, outside time of the presentation, you need to practice how are you going to engage with your audience. So maybe set aside half an hour, other so it's not just a one time practice. You have to keep on practicing again and again and again so that you know how you sound and how you come across. And I will just share a short, quick, kind of a story over here. I this was back many moons ago when I had to MC the graduation ceremony of Kinnaird College for Women, which is a college in Lahore, and we had the then Prime Minister come in, and he was going to be there. So this was like a 2 hour event or something, and I had to MC. This was a really stressful moment that I had to do. So what I did was that I practiced a lot. Just as you're talking about, not to go too fast, not to come across as too loud. And I think that practicing helped me so much that there were moments where I knew that, this is where I falter. This is a stressful kind of uh, whatever comment, or this is a stressful time for me. So I know that I'm going to either speak too fast or too loud. So this is where I really need to focus. So again, I had already highlighted those areas that I was not very confident about. And then I just practiced throughout those. And then eventually at the end, it turned out to be pretty good, actually, even though there were some disruptions from the press and other things. And nobody knew that there would be some of those disruptions. But because I had practiced, because I had these grounding techniques that I was kind of using, and I kind of remained in the moment. So that is the main thing that you have to really kind of look at, is how do you remain mindful and in the moment so that you don't go into that freeze mode. So that's the most important thing that you can do. Yeah. Thank you so much, Faisal.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadia. That is all from the questions section. And I can see that people are really kind of enjoying the series in the sense that you see very long and descriptive questions. So that's like a very good sign. Thank you so much once again for your time and whatever you have been doing for the community is really, really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Faiza. I just want to end on this note. I know that a lot of these tips that I've given are very general, but because again, to echo Shameen's question, that we're not really sure of the audience and how they're going to react in terms of presentations and speaking skills. You are your best coach as well. So yes, one-on-one sessions help a lot, and I can help out individually because individually people are different. So this is something that has to be tailor made as well. So you could read up a lot about effective online communication or presenting on, just presenting. But the main thing is that unless and until you practice and you actually put to practice all of those things that you have read time and again, time and again, time and again, you're not going to improve. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is reflection is very important. So even if it's a presentation, it's a team meeting, anything, you must reflect afterwards. So your reflection could be done in a number of ways. Yourself, you could also ask your peers, you could even ask your supervisors or other people how you've done. A lot of presentations also have evaluations. I don't know if you present at conferences or not, but when we present at conferences, there are evaluations as well, speaker evaluations, and those things also help you. So again, don't take any comments or other things as criticism. Take it as an opportunity to grow, and you will not grow unless and until you put to practice all of the things that you have learned. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, Faiza, Shamim, Yamna, the community, all the communities that are hosting these webinar series. I'd be happy to host other ones as well and to connect with this lovely community that we have and help out in any way possible. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Nadia. Have a good day ahead.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you.